In the early hours of April 13th, a tragic and deeply disturbing event unfolded, an arson attack on the Pennsylvania governor's mansion in Harrisburg, where Governor Josh Shapiro, his wife, children, and guests were asleep. While no injuries were reported, the south wing of the historic residence suffered considerable damage. The suspect, 38-year-old Cody Balmer, now faces charges including attempted murder, terrorism, and aggravated arson. His attack was not random. He allegedly confessed to harboring hatred toward the governor and intended to assault him with a hammer. It was, as authorities have since confirmed, a targeted act. This violent episode has ignited a collective sense of concern about political discourse, mental health, public safety, and the soul of civic life in America. And in Governor Shapiro's own words, which echoed across every media platform, this kind of violence is becoming far too common in our society, and I don't give a damn if it's coming from one particular side or the other. That line, bold and unfiltered, has been widely recognized for its rare clarity and refusal to be drawn into partisan blame games.
Last night, we experienced an attack not just on our family, but on the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania here at the governor's residence. I want to thank the Pennsylvania State Police for safely evacuating our family, for their bravery last evening, and for their careful leadership of this investigation. I want to thank Harrisburg Fire, their chief, who was personally on the scene, spent time with me and my family last night. He and the other firefighters from Harrisburg ran toward danger to help keep us safe and quickly putting out the fire. I want to thank the Capitol Police for assisting the Pennsylvania State Police last night in ensuring everything was orderly. I want to thank the FBI and our federal partners for their assistance. I spoke a couple hours ago with Director Kash Patel of the FBI. He promised all of the resources of the federal government. He was extremely kind and courteous and thoughtful in his conversation with me. And I thanked him and the women and men of the FBI and the President of the United States for their support. Especially want to thank your local district attorney, Fran Chardo. Fran is someone I've known for 20 years in public service, an outstanding leader in law enforcement. You'll hear from him in a few moments. Lori and I are overwhelmed by the prayers and the messages of support that we've received from all across Pennsylvania and all across the United States. We've heard from our fellow governors and first spouses. We've heard from several of the former governors of Pennsylvania. We've heard from so many friends and loved ones. And we've heard from so many caring citizens of this great Commonwealth. I want you all to know that your prayers lift us up. And in this moment of darkness, we are choosing to see light. And we appreciate the light that you have shined upon us. Pennsylvania State Police, led by Colonel Christopher Paris, will brief on the specifics of what transpired. But we do know that this attack was targeted. We don't know the person's specific motive yet, but we do know a few truths. First, this type of violence is not okay. This kind of violence is becoming far too common in our society. And I don't give a damn if it's coming from one particular side or the other, directed at one particular party or another, or one particular person or another. It is not okay. And it has to stop. We have to be better than this. We have a responsibility to all be better. Second, If this individual was trying to deter me from doing my job as your governor, rest assured I will find a way to work even harder than I was just yesterday for the good people of Pennsylvania. Here's a third truth. If he was trying to terrorize our family, our friends, the Jewish community who joined us for a Passover Seder in that room last night, hear me on this. We celebrated our faith last night proudly, and in a few hours, we will celebrate our second Seder of Passover again proudly. No one will deter me or my family or any Pennsylvanian from celebrating their faith openly and proudly. I am grateful to the good people of Pennsylvania for giving me the honor to serve as their 48th governor. I will continue to pour every ounce of my being into this work. I'm going to do my best to be your governor, and right now to be a good husband and father to my family, who are obviously traumatized by what occurred here last night. We are grateful to law enforcement for helping ease some of that trauma thanks to their outstanding work. They were here within seconds, and they did an extraordinary job. Local, state, and federal law enforcement partners.
In that moment, the governor chose moral clarity over political calculus. It is in such moments that leadership reveals its most essential quality, not policy detail or partisan loyalty, but the capacity to speak to a shared truth with courage and sincerity. That truth is unsettling. Violence is bleeding into our public life, threatening to dismantle the fragile trust that democracy requires. Governor Shapiro's response carried the hallmarks of resilience and resolve. Despite the trauma, despite the symbolic desecration of a place meant to represent unity, he stood before the people of Pennsylvania and reaffirmed his commitment to duty and to faith. No one will deter me or my family or any Pennsylvanian from celebrating their faith openly and proudly, he declared. The attack happened on Passover, during a Seder. That night, and again the next evening, the Shapiro family chose light over fear. The story of this attack is not only one of terror narrowly averted. It is a story of layered human complexity. The suspect, Balmer, has a documented history of bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. His mother had sought help days before the attack, warning of his deteriorating mental state. Yet the system found no grounds for involuntary commitment. This failure points to the deeper cracks in our nation's mental health infrastructure, a long-festering crisis that places not only the afflicted but the public at risk. To speak of this system's inadequacy is not to excuse criminality. That the human psyche is not simple. It is a chaotic interplay of biology, belief, circumstance, and culture. When the social contract breaks down, when the inner turmoil of the individual is met not with care but with bureaucratic indifference, violence may erupt. Balmer's alleged actions were evil. But they were also, in part, preventable. The significance of this moment goes beyond Pennsylvania. It reveals a national vulnerability, one that conservative thinkers and critics have long warned against. Our political discourse is now so charged, so deeply polarized, that every public figure carries a new kind of risk. Violent rhetoric, unchecked ideology, and media selectivity all play a role in eroding civil order. As such, conservative outlets were quick to note not only the gravity of the attack, but also the responsibility of all media to report truthfully and completely, including uncomfortable truths about mental illness, criminal backgrounds, or extremist motivations, wherever they originate. There is a deeper philosophical undercurrent to all of this. We are witnessing what happens when clarity is replaced by chaos, when dialogue gives way to confrontation, when intellectual humility is cast aside for ideological rigidity. Governor Shapiro's refusal to scapegoat, "I don't give a damn if it's coming from one particular side or the other," was not a rhetorical flourish. It was a call to return to principle, to engage in constructive, respectful, and truthful discourse. And herein lies an essential value, that truth must not be filtered through the lens of expediency. That society must be governed not only by law, but by virtue. That free speech is not license for hatred, and that the search for truth, like the defense of faith, requires both courage and restraint. As others have often emphasized, a society that loses its grip on shared meaning becomes unmoored. It fails to recognize the importance of boundaries, responsibility, and self-regulation. The attack on the governor's residence was not simply an act of physical violence, it was a symbolic breach of those societal boundaries. Governor Shapiro's public response embraced these very themes. He expressed deep gratitude to law enforcement, the Pennsylvania State Police, the Harrisburg Fire Department, the Capitol Police, and the FBI. In particular, he thanked FBI Director Kash Patel and District Attorney Franchardo by name. This praise for those who uphold order resonated strongly with Americans who believe that law and enforcement institutions are the last bulwark against societal disintegration. But even as the governor praised order, he acknowledged trauma. "We're obviously traumatized by what occurred here last night," he said. That moment of vulnerability mattered. It showed that strength is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act faithfully in spite of it. This incident must provoke a national conversation, not a partisan spectacle, on how we protect our public servants, treat mental illness, and temper our cultural rhetoric. These issues demand more than slogans. They require the courage to listen, to question, to reflect, and, if necessary, to admit fault. Balmer's case is now a legal matter, and the courts will render judgment. But our judgment as citizens must be different. We must ask whether we, too, have become numb to political violence. Whether we, too, have allowed media narratives to shape our compassion selectively. Whether we have traded intellectual humility for ideological certainty. Whether we are still capable of dialogue that honors truth over tribalism. In the final accounting, this was not just an attack on a governor, or a family, or a faith. It was an attack on the very idea that a democratic society can be held together by reason, empathy, and responsibility. In times like these, let us remember that the road back to civil order begins with clarity, not confusion. With firm words, but careful ones. With passionate debate, but respectful tone. And most of all, with a shared commitment to being better than our darkest instincts. As the governor himself said, we have a responsibility to all be better. Let us begin that work. Today. Together.